Hi, welcome to video 2. So today we're talking about autism and the importance of the environment. Being in a place like this with lots of noise going on, lots of background distractions, lots of lighting, maybe a too warm temperature can be a real difficulty for an autistic person to be able to concentrate in this type of a sensory stimulating environment. It causes cognitive overload and it can make it real challenging to be productive in a work situation. So let's get out of here. That's better. Now this is a nice calm environment that a neurodiverse person can relax in. Now when we talk about autism, roughly around 1 to 2% of the population are diagnosed as autistic, but let's not forget that more people likely identify as autistic and there is a higher prevalence of neurodiversity in IT. So when we think about how autism is diagnosed, the criteria indicates that there is restricted, repetitive patterns of behaviour and interests. So sensory sensitivities that we were just discussing fall into this category. And we really have to think about this across all of our senses. So things such as lighting will be extremely important from a sight perspective, getting lighting right in the office space. But also if it's very busy and very chaotic and there's lots of people around, this can be, a lot of variables for an autistic person to take in and process. Things like smells, things like sound, things like temperature are things that, should also be considered. And actually I've seen before at different events that may be put on in the IT community, things like textures is also sensory. So bringing food to a work provided dinner, for example, if that food is a buffet and it has sauces all over the foods, an autistic person may not be able to eat that because of the difference in texture and sensitivity to different tastes and flavors. Within this category, we also have focused hobbies. An autistic person may really focus on some of their keen interests and really may become almost obsessive over that interest, which can actually work to its favour when they are put on a project in the workplace that really does give them passion and something that they really want to achieve. Also, you may see ritualized behavior from an autistic person. So there may be something such as like rocking movements or rubbing of things that, this kind of tapping and repetitive motion. It's often something that we call stimming, short for self-stimulating, which can be a way to calm down when there is a lot of cognitive overload. And oftentimes an autistic person won't realize that they're doing it. The other part of the diagnostic criteria is around social communications and challenges that autistic people face here. So they may sometimes struggle to read non-verbal cues, things like body language, tone of voice. An autistic person very much requires direct communication. An example that I've seen before is in a Teams meeting where the leader of the call will make a statement and wait and give a pause, expecting team members to respond. Now, because they have not asked a direct question and asked for a direct outcome, an autistic person may not realise or understand that they should respond at that point and may not be able to pick up the cues from body language that something is expected. Equally, when we think about relationships and building relationships with our colleagues, an autistic person may not quite comprehend social norms in terms of how a conversation should flow, the back and forth communication, the expectations of response to things like sarcasm or understanding that a response is needed when, like I say, there is a gap or a pause. So we really have to think about being quite direct and quite intentional in the way that we communicate with autistic people, and also understanding from their point of view that if they are quite direct and sometimes almost blunt in their feedback and the way that they communicate, the intention behind it is not to offend or to criticize. It's just that they are leading through logic, and that's how they see communication. It's very logic based. With all of these things said, there are a number of strengths that an autistic person has that can be brought to the workplace or to IT projects in particular. So because of the the extreme focus on areas of interest, this can cause a very good attention to detail, which is an ideal character trait for somebody that needs to analyze data, for example, or a QA engineer, a tester, somebody that's got to spot the layers of detail, the problems with things. Also, tasks that require a strong memory and focus is a real strength and attribute for an autistic person. So things such as programming, their memory can be so good that their ability to learn multiple programming languages can be extremely amazing, actually. And is someone in a role of like system architect that has to understand complex logic can be a really great role as well for an autistic person. Next, they have strong attributes in honesty and integrity. So this can be really beneficial in a project scenario, because in a project you've got to weigh up the risks, and that honesty will come out and they will be very forthcoming with the risks, and again very logical in that, looking to identify ways to close that risk gap. Also, ethical development practices. An autistic person can be very rule-based. So if you set those rules around ethical development and best practice deployment, they will follow those to the letter and hold others accountable to also follow those. Finally, an autistic person can be a very good problem solver, an innovative thinker. So they would be very good at something like UX design, trying to come up with a new way of thinking about something, using their kind of interest and passion and attention to detail to solve problems in a way that that is atypical to the way others will solve it. So overall, there are lots and lots of positives that an autistic person can bring to an IT project or an IT workplace. And there are also things that we should be considering in their ways of communication style and our ways of communicating with them to really enable them to be the most successful colleague that they can be.